Hey, Prime members! Are you tired of ads interfering with your favorite podcasts? Good news! With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free podcasts. That's amazon.com/ad-free podcasts to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Hey, Billy, why don't we tell them what we're about, man?
So we're here to welcome you to the Madhouse Chronicles. It's a talk show with myself, Billy Morrison.
And me, Ozzy Osbourne.
This man, Prince of Darkness. And we watch and react to the maddest internet clips. What do we discuss, Ozzy?
Drugs, rock and roll, aliens, all that kind of shit.
Drugs, rock and roll, aliens, and all that kinds of shit. Come and join Ozzy and myself. Visit osbornemediahouse.com to get special access to...
Come on!
What do you say? Do you think it's the wildest show on the internet?
Oh.
This is Travel in 10.
And now, your host, David Brody.
On today's edition of Travel in 10, we're going to be joined by Scott Wilson. Scott is the travel TV host of two of my favorite travel programs, one called Departures, where he travels with his friends Andre and Justin to destinations around the world over several seasons, and a second newer show called Descending, where he explores the underwater world, scuba diving at destinations around the world. Two of the really distinguishing things I think about both these travel shows is the cinematography. Andre, who is the cinematographer on these shows, won several awards for both programs, and really some of the most stunning cinematography I've seen in any travel program. And Scott makes a great host, and hopefully that comes across in the interview today, where you're going to hear some of his experience working on both shows. This is going to be a little bit longer than our standard 10-minute podcast. We've got the interview actually broken up into 4 parts. Once we started talking with Scott, he had a lot of great stories to tell, interesting things about his work on both shows, so a little bit longer interview. You're going to find 2 parts of the interview available on our podcast that you can find on iTunes by searching for Travel in 10, or also on our website at travelin10.com. The second 2 parts of the interview are actually going to be available exclusively on our app, which you can find on the iTunes, the Android, or the Windows Phone app stores. It's only $1.99, and by purchasing the app helps us continue to bring you travel shows from around the world. And you're going to find bonus content, not just for these most recent episodes, but also some of our older episodes as well, bonus video content, bonus audio content, just small little snippets of additional interviews or additional videos from destinations around the world that you may enjoy as well. So hopefully you'll go check that out.
So for anyone who hasn't had the chance to see Descending yet, can you tell me a little bit about the premise behind the show to start off?
Yeah, well, Descending is a 13-part series. It is a travel show. It just happens to focus on our underwater world. And so it still takes the viewer to the destination and explores the destination. It just happens to be that a lot of that destination, or why we're going there, is underwater. And we were careful to try to put a number of different focuses on why we were doing this underwater stuff. So it isn't just, pretty fish in the Caribbean to a music track. And that's generally what we were seeing out of dive-related TV shows in the past was one of 2 realms. It was either that, it was, the sport scuba diver kind of, going to different Caribbean islands and showing off Nemo underwater with a music bed to it. And obviously that left a lot lacking of what could be showed off underwater. The other avenue seemed to be the very slick professional, BBC production like Planet Earth or something, which is just mind-bogglingly beautiful and well executed, except that there's a real disconnect for the viewer, I think, because it is that classic documentary style. So there's David Attenborough's voice over these stunning images. And so there's that real disconnect. So what we wanted to do is try to bridge that gap. We wanted to have something that was host-driven and experience-based and show rookie divers such as myself, that there's a big world out there to see. And for what I thought I was as an experienced traveler, it's really still quite a small world when you factor in that 70% of our planet is water. So I guess that's an exceptionally long premise to sort of describe for you, but that's sort of the all-encompassing idea of what descending is.
And how did you get interested in diving to start off with?
Well, I oddly enough, I was always interested in diving. I would always marvel at, if I saw a scuba diver getting out of the water, or, even just, watching underwater documentary content. It blew me away. But for some reason, I always thought, and I don't know why, but I've said this before, I always thought that it was somehow greater than me. It was bigger or better than me. It was something that, I don't know, it just took more focus and more self-discipline and everything than I could do. It was sort of beyond my realm, and that would just be something I would never do in this lifetime. And when we were in Brazil with our last program, Departures, we had the opportunity to do sort of a discover scuba diving. And so we jumped at the opportunity to do, well, I shouldn't say, to be truthful, Andre, my business partner and the cameraman of both programs, jumped at the opportunity. He had always wanted to get underwater as well. His dad was a diver, and he kind of pressured us a little bit. He was like, we should do this. It's good for the show. We should show off what else we can do, and it was something we hadn't done with the show thus far. And so I was a bit reluctant. And even while snorkeling and swimming in the deep end of a pool, if I were to duck dive and swim down to try to grab something off the bottom, I always had that problem with the pressure in my ears, and it would always really bother me. And that made me quite anxious the first time getting in the water with a tank on my back, thinking, how am I going to do this? And luckily, I had a very patient instructor the first time, and I found a way, to kind of together, talking through it underwater, if you will. We were able to figure out a way for me to properly clear my ears without, hurting myself or doing any damage or anything like that. And all of a sudden, the wall, or I guess this iron curtain that I always held between me and diving, was lifted. And I was just now focused on everything that was under there to see, and I was blown away. And after that first foray into diving, I knew it was something that I wanted to do. And Andre and I immediately started talking about it afterwards, of how this was going to be the next big inspiration for us to show off the world and to show off traveling as well.
Let's talk a little bit more about Andre and your previous show in a minute, but I'd also like to know a bit about your co-host for the show, Ellis, and how you got together with him for this series.
Ellis and I have a lot of history. We met, probably somewhere around 13 years ago now. Andre and I were working on another travel program, not of our own, but another travel property that was airing on OLN years and years ago, as I say. And we were in Southeast Asia at the time. We were actually in Cambodia, and we were in Siem Reap, and we were sitting down at an outdoor patio. And 13 years has actually changed Cambodia quite a lot. And back then there were only a handful of hotels. There were one or two fancy hotels, and there were 3 or 4 backpackers, and that was about it. And so we saw this guy, after being in Southeast Asia for a little over a month. We saw this Caucasian guy speaking English, and it was sort of a familiar. It was almost like a homesick kind of feeling. You're like, finally, I can kind of communicate with someone else outside of our immediate team. And so we said hello and sat down, had a beer together, and we were listening to all his crazy stories of his travels, and we thought what we were doing was adventurous, and listening to what he was doing, motorcycling through Vietnam and Cambodia and all of these harrowing tales and everything, and we were blown away. And the director of that particular program at the time was also blown away, and sort of on the spot, on the streets of Siem Reap, offered him a job on this travel TV program. And so he jumped at the opportunity, and within a few months we were working with him. And so I got to travel to South America extensively with Ellis, and we had a lot of adventures of our own, and obviously a pretty tight-knit friendship blossomed out of that. And when he got married, I flew down to New Zealand to see him, as he's a Kiwi. And we forged a wonderful friendship, and so because of his love of travel, he's been a diver for ages and ages and ages, and obviously because of our friendship as well, it seemed like a great match for descending to sort of pull him on and be able to travel with someone travel with someone who is a diver and appreciates the diving, and potentially you can feed off each other. And obviously has a love affair with travel just like I do. So it was a perfect match.
So can I ask what that first OLN show that you guys were there filming was?
Yeah, it was a show called Don't Forget Your Passport, which is still, I don't think it's on OLN anymore in syndication, but I think it still exists on Canadian TV somewhere, and it's still airing internationally here and there. And so Andre and I were the hired guns, and we were still in film school at the time when we were offered the opportunity to work on the show, and it was great. It absolutely fueled the travel passion for us, and made us realize that we might be able to pull this off for ourselves. And so we owe a lot to those experiences for sure.
So going from Don't Forget Your Passport to Departures now to your newest show and filming so much of the show underwater, that must have been a huge challenge.
Unbelievably so. Yeah, I don't think we really realized what we were getting into exactly until the first show, and we were trying to pull it off and trying to get that content underwater is difficult. One of the most important things for us, as I say, in order to bridge that gap with the viewer and to take them underwater, was to be able to really interact underwater as well. And so we use full face masks, which allow us to talk and communicate. But with that comes a lot of production headaches. So, you've got this little recording unit that your mask is feeding to. And, if that floods, then obviously the recorder's shot. And I mean, we must have a box somewhere in the office of failed and flooded recorders from throughout the season. I mean, we just bought them like it was bubble gum through the year. And then obviously working that camera for Andre was a huge challenge. We tried to really up the ante from Departures into Descending as far as the visual medium. And while we shot Departures in high definition, it was on a Panasonic HVX 200, which is sort of a pseudo high definition camera in that it shoots at 720p, so not the full 1080 resolution. With Departures, we shot on what they call the RED camera. It's a company called RED, a digital cinema camera company out of the United States, on the RED 1 camera. So that was 4K. So like 4 times the resolution that Departures was shot on. And it allowed us to really capture what we needed to underwater. Obviously, it can be a dark place to film underwater. And so to be able to have the resolution there and the bit rate, the amount of information that camera shot was crucial for us to then bring it home, color correct it, and really show off what we saw with our eyes, because obviously cameras nowadays are fantastic, but they still struggle to see what our human eye can see. So there were a lot of struggles. I mean, that camera in its housing, fully built with lighting gear and battery and everything, weighed about 80 pounds outside of the water. So to get it in and out and travel around with that is quite a production. For a small team, it's quite a production.
I bet. And I read that, I mean, you shot some of this on a RED, and some of it even on GoPros, if I'm not mistaken, as well.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, this was a little after the dawn of GoPro, but we realized very quickly that it was a tool we were stupid to ignore. And while it doesn't exactly have the picture quality that, the RED camera does, etc., it was able to capture things that the RED wasn't. It's able to obviously go places that bigger cameras can't. And so we always had, for instance, on every single dive, we had a GoPro on the camera housing facing back at Andre, and that allowed us to capture anything that would have happened to Andre. So if he had an issue, if he had a certain facial expression that expressed what was going on, if a shark swam behind him and it wasn't in front of the big camera lens, then we had sort of that backup. So the GoPro was a crucial tool for us for sure.
And did I read somewhere that you lost one of the RED cameras along the way somewhere as well?
We didn't lose a RED camera, thankfully. We had a few floods, but they were light enough that it didn't actually destroy a RED camera, so that was lucky. During Departures, we destroyed a number of HVX 200 cameras, and we lost I mean, people lose GoPros all the time, but we lost one of our GoPros in a light aircraft crash in Indonesia as well. So it's still sitting at the bottom of the ocean. We'll probably never see that again. So we have an ongoing list in the office of things that have been broken or destroyed from the filming of Descending, and it's a big list. I mean, now that there's an ultralight aircraft on the list, and my face is on the list, and we lost the matte box, which is for those that are unaware, it's sort of this shield on the front of the lens of the camera that kind of prevents the sun's reflection of that lens flare from coming in. And you can put these filters in, and they drop in front of it to adjust the visual look a little bit. And so we had this nice matte box on the front of our Red camera in South Africa, and we're filming overboard as all these great whites are coming in. And the matte box fell off into the water, and we're all kind of looking at each other like, so who's going to go get it? And we're like, you know what? Forget it. It's gone. Just leave it. So there's a big list of equipment that is growing, by the day that we're in the field of things that go missing or get damaged. But that's production, and that's what we do. So.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed part one of our interview with Scott Wilson. You can check out Scott's shows on the Outdoor Life Network here in Canada, on the Travel Channel International around the world, and on Esquire TV in the U.S. And you can also find some episodes, particularly of Descending. I know there's a few full episodes that you can get online as well, so I would encourage you to go check that out. The second part of the interview is going to be available exclusively on our app that you can find on the iTunes, the Android, or the Windows Phone App Store just by searching for Travel in 10, and you can get the second part of our interview with Scott there. The third part is going to be available for free on the website and at travelin10.com, and also on iTunes on our podcast, searching for Travel in 10 in the podcast directory. And you'll find that there in a couple of weeks' time. So hopefully you enjoyed that first part of the interview with Scott. Next part, he talks about some of the interesting things that happened on Descending, from plane crashes and surviving those to some more tips about how they got some of the great cinematography that they managed to get around the world on both shows. As we get into the second two parts of the interview, he talks a little bit more about Departures and his work on that show. So hopefully something that you'll come back and check out.
Thanks for listening. Download more of our travel shows from around the world at www.travelin10.com.
This has been a presentation of Travel in 10.